Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, featuring yours truly, the old salty dog, John Martin, as your host, and the captain, as always, of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Good morning, Ted.
Good seeing you, John. Happy Easter to you, and good to see you. You're looking good and look like you got a little tan. You must have been out fishing.
I was out fishing. It was kind of it was beautiful out there, but the trip itself was a bit slow. It's the water temperature still kind of chilly out there, and I did catch a jackpot red grouper, 17.7 pounds, so that was pretty cool. But we always talk about calling Freddie, about getting on the show here and being a part of this team and moving us forward. So make that call. It says call Freddie. Become a sponsor of our cause here. But I want to wish our sponsors, Freddie Weeby, his wife Doreen, Doreen, I think is her name, actually, had a birthday this week, and they were celebrating. I saw a bunch of Facebook posts, so we want to wish the First Lady of the Weeby family happy birthday.
Absolutely. Happy birthday there, Miss Doreen. And Freddie, I know you did her justice, taking her out and cooking her breakfast and all that good stuff.
No doubt about it. Well, you mentioned Easter, so I want to play a snippet here of an Easter message from one of the astronauts on the Artemis II mission. And this was literally broadcast when they were passing by the moon yesterday. I think it really puts life to a certain extent and the Easter message in perspective. Let's play this and we'll come back and get your thoughts on it, Ted. He's trying to load it up.
He'll get it. Zach does a great job.
Oh,
For
yeah.
me, one of the really important personal perspectives that I have up here is I can really see Earth as one thing. And, when I read the Bible and I look at all of the amazing things that were done for us who were created, it's you have this amazing place, this spaceship. You guys are talking to us because we're in a spaceship really far from Earth, but you're on a spaceship called Earth that was created to give us a place to live in the universe, in the cosmos. I think maybe the distance we are from you makes you think what we're doing is special, but we're the same distance from you, and I'm trying to tell you, just trust me, you are special. In all of this emptiness, this is a whole bunch of nothing, this thing we call the universe. You have this oasis, this beautiful place that we get to exist together. I think as we go into Easter Sunday, thinking about, all the cultures all around the world, whether you celebrate it or not, whether you believe in God or not, this is an opportunity for us to remember where we are, who we are, and that we are the same thing and that we got to get through this together.
Well, for someone who didn't have anything prepared, that was really
a spaceship called Earth, Ted.
I tell you what, I can't think of a prettier view than that when you see the Earth from above looking down upon it. And his words were perfect. Of all, as big as the universe is, the massive size of this, and you see that one blue dot, and we're blessed to live on that. And it comes from our Creator putting us here. And we can do a better job. We've done great, but we need to do a lot better.
Absolutely.
To preserve future generations.
Well, over the weekend, President Trump put out a X or a tweet or whatever they're calling them now, a True Social post, I think, actually. And I came up with this headline, is Trump unhinged or unleashed? Because he did write something pretty harsh, and I'm going to read it here for you, Ted, and we'll turn it back to you. This is what President Trump posted, I guess, on True Social over the weekend. He said, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the effing strait, talking about the Strait of Hormuz, you crazy bees, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch praise be to Allah. What are your thoughts about that, Ted?
Not very presidential. I mean, it's a direct message. I had kind of thought the same thing. Is he becoming unhinged? John, this is the leader of America. This is the leader of the most powerful nation in the world. And it's just unbecoming of the presidency. I say that. I've not gone through what he's gone through. I know he's frustrated and he's feeling that. And there's people talking about, is this the 25th Amendment? We've got to look at where we're at. And I bring this up, and I know this is going to make some people upset. When you see what's going on with our allies, NATO not wanting us to be part, they don't want to participate in allowing our military jets use their bases or any of our military. And I know you have that segment on NATO. At this point in time, we need to be building allies. And Trump did this in his first term. He got NATO to stand up and pay their dues, and it made it a lot stronger. Now what he's doing is he's alienating them at a time where we really need people together. And there's talk about Iran is trying to make a deal with the European Union that they'll allow their ships to come through, and they're going to use euros to pay for that. And if they do that, that knocks the world oil trade off the American dollar, which is something we've had since the 70s. And, that could jeopardize our national security, could jeopardize our banking system, the value of our money. And I hope Trump has a very well thought out end plan for this, because it's very sketchy right now. And you're having Republicans starting to talk about the 25th Amendment. And I'd like to hear your comments on that and what your thoughts are.
Well, the 25th Amendment specifically, I don't think it applies to myself, and I will get into that a little bit deeper in just a second. But Trump unhinged versus unleashed. I can see why people would say he's unhinged when he says stuff like he said. I don't particularly care for it either. I do think it's unpresidential, although I don't think of it quite the way some people do, because to me, we've had presidents that say and do all the right things, and sometimes I think we do need to be a bit unleashed. I think it's more that President Trump feels frustrated because he's done a lot, he's sacrificed a lot personally, and he's not really gotten the credit for it. He's not even gotten the support that I think he should have been getting in his first term from the Republicans. And a lot of people will probably go, well, what more would he want? But they've literally had to fight his way all the way through. And I think he's looking at, being in office another couple, like 3.5 years, basically. And the Republicans probably are very likely, if you go by history, will lose either one or both parts of it. So he's going to be in turmoil over that. I feel like he's feeling a bit unleashed more than unhinged myself.
Well, I think there's a fine line between some of that. And I agree with your assessment of that. But if you're going against tough opposition like Iran, and I'm okay with, I wouldn't have gone in there like he did. I would have done something different. But now we're here, we're there, and you want people to come to your side and support you. And I think if you acted more presidential, you can get the same thing done and carry on the same mission without coming out and saying that. I mean, look through history. I can't think of another president that came out and said that. And I agree with you. He's the one that's acted instead of just giving rhetoric. But I think if he gave better rhetoric, he would have more people supporting him and say, yeah, heck yeah, we're going to go in there. We're going to finish this job. Now we're going to see what's going to happen tomorrow. And the thing what you're going to do is you're going to inflame people like Kim Jong-un. He's like, this guy's unhinged. We're going to go after him before he comes after us. Take out one or two of our aircraft carriers. That's 5,000 plus people per aircraft carrier. Think how that would change the dynamics of the status of the United States as being a superpower. And then think of what that's going to do to bring in other countries, maybe siding with Iran and just say, America's off base. They've lost their way. And so we're going to create a new world order. basically without them. This is the thing with BRICS. This is the thing with the European Union. Let's just hope we get through this and America comes out strong and the world is a better place after this.
Well, you mentioned what I always call the latest Kim in North Korea. Did you see where he got reelected? They had election. He got over 99% of the vote in North Korea, and but his opponent, I think, was it was Kim Jong Un was running, but I think his opponent was death by dog. So. I mean,
he's done that.
He got over 99% of the vote, kid.
Yeah, he's mad because he wants to know who voted against him, and that's exactly what will happen. I mean, they'll hang him up and let the dogs or the pigs eat him, or shoot him like he did his uncle, Spread Eagle, and shot him with a cannon from a tank.
Yeah, it's crazy. But Trump's post on Truth Social, we were just talking about, the blowback to the party overshadowed the widely hailed, I'm reading from this article, Saturday rescue of the missing U.S. airmen in Iran and the reaction to that earlier on Sunday. In case you've been living under a rock, and this all happened while I was out in the beautiful Gulf of America fishing, but we had a plane shot down. The pilot was rescued immediately. One of the mission specialists was on the ground for like 24 hours, actually scaled like a 7,000-foot incline, hid in a crevice while the Iranians were looking for him. There was some misinformation put out on purpose to distract them. I mean, it was a textbook operation. We literally went in there, surrounded the area, basically created a fortress with our people in there and rescued this guy. It just was amazing what they were able to do. And it was an Easter miracle pulled off by some heroes. But it has what Trump said over the weekend did overshadow that a bit, which is unfortunate.
Well, it did. And kudos go out and congratulations to the military for carrying this out. All the people involved in that, all the people that had the bravery to go out and do those things. I mean, that is a tough thing to do, to go into that kind of an environment where you are going into enemy territory. They lost 2 planes. Each plane costs over $100 million apiece. And the good thing is we got our person out of there. But again, we announced how we did it, which I think is bad. We used the CIA for misinformation. Go back to what Trump was saying when he got questioned about, are you doing covert operations in Venezuela? Yeah, we're going in there. They're covert operations. Well, they're not. As soon as you announce that they're covert operations ongoing in Venezuela, they are now overt operations. You don't want to give your hand to your enemy. So I wish we wouldn't tell people how we do things. Just let them keep wondering about it and looking around the corners. But I'm glad they're out of there. This is an important thing, because you can only imagine, John, what would have happened to that service member had Iranians found him. I can see him going, we're going to give you a choice, Mr. President, your life for his. Can you imagine a scenario like that? And we're in this war, whether you like it or not. It needs to come to an end quickly. And I don't know how you're going to do that. Is our bunker buster bombs going to happen, or a nuclear bombs going to happen? And if we do that, what's the legacy of President Trump? What's the legacy of the United States of America? And how's the rest of the world going to look at America from now on?
Well, they're just dying to capture one of our people and drag them through the streets, like what happened like in Benghazi with our emissaries over there. That's what they want to do.
Somalia.
That's what they want to do.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, this is going to be a tough way to go if that happens. And I pity the service member if they do get caught. But John, again, going back to where we are, if the EU decides to go with Iran and start buying petroleum with European Union dollars, the euro, that's a game changer. Life will change here in America. I know our good friend Freddie has been through 3 countries where the dollars collapse or their currencies collapse. and it's an ugly situation. So let's hope that through diplomacy that we can keep NATO and the European Union on our side and other countries. Because you know what? You know who's sitting back in the back you don't ever hear about? Is China. They're loving what's going on because it's just making them stronger and it's making us weaker. And it goes back to Sun Tzu. Don't get caught into these protracted wars because they accomplish very little and they cost a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I agree as far as protracted war. I'm not sure we're quite there yet.
No,
But
we're not.
could we be heading in that direction? No doubt. But what really irritates me, and I'm not saying don't criticize President Trump, but some people have kind of lost their right, if you will, to me. And one of them is like Chuck Schumer. He described the post the president saying, ranting like an unhinged madman on social media as Americans head off to church and celebrate with friends and family. Schumer warned Trump was threatening a possible war crimes and alienating allies. War crimes, Ted. That's the thing about it is when I hear somebody like Chuck Schumer talk about it, and I hear some of these Democrats talk about it, when they have done nothing at all over the whole time they're there to safeguard America, to me, it just irritates me when people like that are talking.
It really does. I mean, he's been up there and he'll play both sides. You know, if they're in power, they're going to do this. If their president's there, they're going to do the same thing that Trump's doing. You know, you look at Obama when he was in there, they had 26,000 drone strikes while he was in office, and they were laughing about it. And they killed U.S. citizens. They killed people, school children, wedding parties. They did that. Those were war crimes. You look at how they look at Netanyahu, the international community. They want to hold him up on war crimes. You look at President Duarte out of the Philippines, who was doing the extrajudicial killings, and we've talked about this. He got tried at the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and he got convicted. So if he goes somewhere where another country honors that, they're going to arrest him and he'll be he'll be put in prison. This same thing goes to George Bush. He's been convicted of that, and it's going to happen to Trump. I don't know so much on this, but on those drug boat cartels, the cartel boats, which I don't have a problem with getting rid of those people. They're bad people. They bring a lot of harm, not just our nation, but to other nations. But to do it the way he's doing it, instead of saying our policy, if we catch you in our territory, this is what's going to happen. That would be a whole different scenario versus just saying we're going out in international waters doing this. And you got to look beyond this presidency. This is creating a narrative of what America is. Is this the America you want your kids to live with? Think of Nazi Germany. The kids that grew up during the war had nothing to do with it. They've got that stigma. Oh, you're a German. You grew up under Hitler, and they still have that feeling. The Japanese are the same way. When you talk to them about the war, they kind of hang their head. And do you want your grandkids to have that kind of a legacy that they're going to listen to? I think we could do better. And let's just hope we get through this as quick as we can and that some normalcy comes to the rest of the world as soon as it comes.
Yeah,
you know what? We just had Easter. So this is the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, our Savior. Let's hope America goes through a resurrection.
Yeah, and the thing about it, of course, our military deserves all the credit in the world for saving the pilots over the weekend.
Right.
But at the same time, Trump deserves some credit as well, because keep in mind, yes, our military is able to do that, but they were able to go into and save the guys in Benghazi, but Mr. Obama wouldn't send them, even though they had volunteers. They were able to go in and save the guys in Somalia, yet they weren't allowed to. So, that's got to be frustrating to our military people. Trump at least gave the order and said nobody's going to be left behind and allowed our people to do what they do. And Biden allowed 13 guys to get massacred at the airport in Afghanistan. The reality, and even as much as I loved Ronald Reagan, we had all those Marines killed in that bear. We should have taken Iran out right then. Right then, when they killed all those Marines in those barracks, we should have taken them out then. So at least give Trump some credit for doing something as opposed to just talking.
I agree 100% with you, John. I mean, that's a good point to bring up. And all I'm saying is he has acted. He said he was going to act. We know he's going to act. But don't take away from what you did by don't saying what you're saying, because kids are watching that. Young kids are watching that. And it's kind of like Bill Clinton, I did not have sexual relationships with that woman. You know, kids are watching that and say, well, man, he's doing that and he's president of the United States. And then they're looking at Trump. He can be a bad boy and he's president of the United States, talks tough. The future generations are watching. It's like you're a parent. You know, those things you do that you wish your kids didn't see, they're going to mimic that. And, you know, are we going to become that nation? That's, I don't know. I just think I look at the words of Marco Rubio coming up, and I think those are great words that are inspiring, is what I see.
Absolutely. Well, the way I look at it, you know, we might not be able to a regime change in Iran. We might have to just do a whack-a-mole thing where we basically do bomb them back. I hate to say it, back to the Stone Age and just watch them. I mean, to me, it's you know, it's pretty extreme what's happening over there, and I wonder if we can just be settled for just taking them out, observing what they're doing. Because here's the thing: you cannot bestow freedom to anybody. They're going to have to fight for it. Now, they're unarmed. I'm not saying don't help them or whatever, but we may have to just sit back and allow whatever takes course, take course, and just protect our own rights at some point.
Well, I hear you, but that's exactly what Hillary Clinton did and Obama did when they took out Muammar Gaddafi. They crippled their air defense. They took out the no-fly zone so that they couldn't protect themselves. And then they said, let's sit back and see what happens. ISIS happened. You know, all those beheadings came out of that because those were terrorist training camps, and ISIS grew out of that. And then you have Madami has people in there that were ISIS, and they're holding up the one-finger salute to ISIS. So to sit back and just see what happens, I think is a terrible strategy. I think you're there, you need to make it happen. Now, keep in mind, it's a Muslim country. Everybody knows that. Turkey is on the sidelines. Turkey has the third largest military in the world. They have our F-35s. They have our training. They have our technology. Plus, they have Russians' technology. And, you know, they haven't weighed in on this, but I know which way they will go. They will go to protect their Muslim neighbors if push comes to shove. And so as this escalates, I think you're going to see that happen. NATO's already weakened with the soundbite you have coming up from Rubio. And so if NATO is weakened, Turkey's part of NATO. Can you see them leaving NATO if we pull out? And they're going to side with Iran. And this is all conjecture. This is how I see it playing out. And if that happens, again, China's just sitting there and they're watching everybody erode their military strength, losing friendships and allies and relationships. And that NATO alliance that we have has been the strongest since World War II. And that is a big part of why there has not been a world war. And you heard me talk about before, if China moves on Taiwan, then Japan comes into a war that brings us into a war. We're right on the verge of that. And let me tell you how real this is. We just got the president's budget. The one I saw from the words I got from DC, the information, our military budget was right at $1 trillion previous to what's going on now. Our discretionary spending is a little bit less than that. This new budget has the military at over $2 trillion. So it's over double of where it's been. And they're cutting domestic programs. These are austerity measures, John, going on right now in this country. We're paying over $3 billion a day in interest. There's a breaking point coming. And when you see a nation cutting, so I don't want to say social programs, they're cutting as many programs as they can, but they're ramping up their military spending Germany's ramping up their military spending. China's prepared for war. It's an ugly situation going on right there. And if the EU starts trading petroleum dollars in euros, things will change in our lifetime that you can't even anticipate.
Well, Ted,
Maybe
earlier.
Maybe it's time for the aliens to be released, the information to get our mind
Very well
off.
be. Maybe that's what Artemis is doing up there. But you mentioned the 25th Amendment. And here's the thing. I want to play this video here. It's an Easter video, so to speak, because I don't want to hear about the 25th Amendment from some of these people when they allowed this to happen. Let's play this Easter Bunny video, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Took Joe Biden out. He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden. You remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden. You remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not going to take.
If they're going to let Joe Biden not only stay in the presidency, but attempt to run him for re-election, after all that we could see there, I mean, come on, it's pretty hard to accept the 25th Amendment.
You sound like Joe there for a minute. Come on, man.
Come on, man. And then the other thing I hear him say is that this is not our war. And I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, what did they talk about with Ukraine? That's not our war then. I mean, to me, it just doesn't make any sense. Let's have some consistency, because to me, what's really at stake, Ted, and we've talked about this before, but I was listening to it on the way in, MS Now, Morning Joe, so you don't have to. But they're talking about how they got an Iran expert on there, and he's talking about how these guys are extremists and you can't really negotiate with them. They're always going to be, they believe in martyrdom and all that. But they're making the very case for why we need to take them out, because you cannot trust them, you cannot negotiate them, and they long for the end of days.
Well, they really do, and you can't beat a religious ideology by negotiating. It's got to be a complete annihilation, and I hate to use that word, but that's what it'll come to. It's kind of like Germany and Japan. The reason they surrendered is we had done so much damage that they were begging for relief. With what's going on now, though, the Iranian, or that whole Islamic jihadist attitude, is something that I fear will grow more, and you're going to see more in this country, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong on that. But again, I think you just need to watch what Turkey does and where we're going with that. The difference is with Chuck Schumer saying the stuff he says is not our war. Ukraine is not our war, and that's where I advocated. That's where Trump should have taken American interests and said to NATO, we will work with you guys to protect Ukraine. It's a sovereign nation. It's being attacked by Russia, who is your neighbor. So we should be arm in arm with NATO, but not out in front. I think that was a misstep. Here, we've had a country Iran saying death to America for over 47 years. You think of the oil embargoes of the 70s, how they influenced that, and they've done it ever since. Anytime they get irritated or a hemorrhoid or whatever it is, and when the Ayatollah gets, indigestion, the gas prices go up, and they've done that since for over 47 years. At some point, it needs to come to an end. If they got a nuclear weapon, and we knew they were getting close, they already had the ICBMs. They've proven that. At what point do you not intervene? And so I can forgive the president for going in there. Now that we're in there, let's finish it and let's move on and bring some order back to the world to keep our dominance there. There's so many places we're losing dominance in, whether it's biotech research, AI, all these things that are going on while we're being distracted by this war and putting all this money into that instead of doing programs like Artemis and, AI research and quantum computing. And in the meantime, China's just churning on, and they're just doing more and more. On my call this morning, they're talking about people leaving this country, going Moderna, one of the vaccine manufacturers. Our country says no more money going into mRNA vaccine research, which is really the next phase in vaccine research. I know there's a lot of stigma about it. So they pulled out of America. They're going to Canada, and they're being funded by China. Who's going to have the technological biotech edge 10 years from now if we continue down this path?
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a break here in just a minute, but I want to play two back-to-back videos that I think actually put this in perspective, what is actually at stake here. So this first one, we'll just play them back-to-back. Check this out.
5 miles away from you. The first thing you would see is a bright flash from the impact. Then you would start to see the mushroom cloud from the blast. But from the explosion itself, there would be this massive shockwave coming towards you. Now, it would only take about 10 seconds to reach you, and by the time... This is what happens when a nuke explodes 5 miles away from you. The first thing you would see is a bright flash from the impact. Then you would start to see the mushroom cloud from the blast. But from the explosion itself, there would be this massive shockwave coming towards you. Now, it would only take about 10 seconds to reach you, and by the time...
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. The nuke there, that's what's at stake, because I've made this point before, but if Iran had a nuclear weapon, I don't think there's any question they would use it. First on Israel, and then ultimately on us and Europe as well. They would use it, Ted. There's just no doubt.
Their actions speak louder than words. They would have used it. They sure would have. Israel would be obliterated. We would be severely damaged for years to come, decades to come. Life in America would cease as we know it. So for that reason, I can side with the president. But man, don't go and inflame the people you're trying to get to be on your side that much more. I just think it's a misstep on him. And he's always had that problem, but it's getting more ramped up. And I know there's more pressure on him than he's ever had. But then I also look at, you brought some of that upon yourself. Learn to play nice in the sandbox, but, stay in charge of your toys.
Yeah, and I want to play one more video from the Artemis 2 mission, because I think it puts into perspective what is really, truly at stake here, Ted.
It shows a backlit Earth revealing auroras as the crew heads towards the moon. This one shows Earth as you can see the Terminator line. And Reed also took this photo after translunar injection burn yesterday. What an amazing shot that he shared with us here. This first one we got to the ground shows the unique vantage point of the crew.
That spaceship called Earth, Ted, that's really what's at stake at the end of the day. We're all on the same spaceship, regardless of what your belief systems are, your culture is. As far as we know, there's no other planet like Earth. I believe that there are aliens and all that stuff. I think it's very possible out there. But the only thing we know for sure is that there's not many planets like ours, certainly in this solar system. And that's what's at stake. We're going to take a break, Ted. So take us to break, talk about Calling Freddie, and take us to commercial break, sir.
No, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Numbers are growing, and our goal is to educate people, motivate you, and activate you so that we can get this word out. We love your feedback, and please be a sponsor, and we'll see you after the break.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
Well, Ted, we're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast. And while we've been talking about what's happening in Iran, one of the things that has really become clear is I'm not sure who our true allies are anymore, Ted. I want to play a video here from Marco Rubio, and he pretty much talks about it because we just assume that our NATO allies are our principal allies in the world. Yes, Israel is one, Japan, we have multiple allies, but it really begs the question about who our true friends and allies really are. Let's play it and we'll come back and talk about it.
The NATO alliance means that we can't use those bases, that in fact, that we can no longer use those bases to defend America's interests. The NATO is a one-way street. The NATO is simply about us having troops in Europe to defend Europe, but when we need their help, not their help, we're not asking them to conduct airstrikes. When we need them to allow us to use their military bases, their answer is no, then why are we in NATO? So I think there's no doubt, unfortunately, after this conflict is concluded, we are going to have to re-examine that relationship. We're going to have to re-examine the value of NATO and that alliance for our country ultimately.
Well, Secretary Rubio pretty much sums it up there, Ted. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Marco's absolutely correct on that. You know, here we've been over there since World War II. They've benefited from that, not just the protection, but the money coming into their economies from U.S. service members, the money we're spending on those bases that really helps their economies out. And then they want to play this kind of just garbage. You know, this is their problem too. You know, Iran's affected their oil prices. Russia's affected their oil prices. And if they want to side with both of those countries over the United States of America, good riddance to them. You know, and I think this would please a lot of people that, and this goes back to what George Washington said, honest and open trade with all nations, entanglement with none. See you guys, take care. Have a nice day. Don't call us if you need help again. Because I think it's coming down to that, John. And, you know, we'd hate to lose that relationship, but it's their choice, not ours.
Yeah, well, Ted, I've always made a differential between a friend and an ally. Allies, and this is not a knock on anyone, but allies come together when it's in their mutual self-interest. Not necessarily all the time, but just when it's in their mutual self-interest. A friend and an ally is someone that sides with you even if they think you're wrong. And there aren't many of those. I mean, I used to think England was, France maybe not, you know, but England certainly was. But if you want to hear what a true friend and ally sounds like, I want to play a video that pretty much sums up my thought of basically our only what I call friend and ally we have at the moment.
Right.
Congratulations, President Trump. All Israelis rejoice in the incredible rescue of a brave American pilot by America's dauntless warriors. This proves that when free societies muster their courage and their resolve, they can confront seemingly insurmountable odds and overcome the forces of darkness and terror. This rescue operation reinforces a sacred principle. No one is left behind. This is a shared value demonstrated time and time again in the history of both our countries. As a nation that repeatedly carried out daring rescue operations, and as someone who was wounded in such a mission and lost a brother in the Entebbe rescue, Israelis and I, we know what a bold decision you took. President Trump, Donald, my dear friend, once again, your decisive leadership brought another great victory to America. I salute you. We all do.
So what are your thoughts about my theory, Ted, that we have allies sometimes and very few friends and allies?
I think you're absolutely right. You know, a friend in need is a friend indeed. Israel's been there with us, and people, you know, they bash Israel all the time. There's a lot of mutual benefits from both countries. You know, we get a lot of high-tech development, AI, you know, all the weapon systems that they come with, the computer programs that they come with are cutting edge. And so there is this mutual exchange that strengthens both of our countries. We have the same basic foundational principles, you know, the beliefs. Our system of Christianity was founded over in the old land over there under Judaism. And, you know, we've been allies for a long time. And in these times of need, you can really tell who your friends are. And there'll be hopefully, and I hope this doesn't happen. I hope there isn't a moment in Europe where, again, they have to call on the United States of America to help them, because these will be remembered and there will be some concessions made. And let's hope we don't see that. But unfortunately, if you look at world history and the interim between one conflict to the next, we're right at that time period. And you know how we know history repeats itself if you don't learn from those mistakes. Let's hope that we can avoid that, and that we gain more friends that will stand by us. You know, a lot of people will say, well, Israel's the bad player in all of this. That's what's caused all this conflict. And I'm like, I would rather have Israel be an ally and a friend of ours in the Middle East, because they're the only backstop against the jihadist takeover that the radicals want to carry forth. And we're starting to see it over here in our shores, John.
Yeah, well, some Republican leaders have basically questioned whether we can continue. You heard Rubio, but Ted Cruz just said the unfortunate consequences for Europe of the last month will reverberate for decades, talking about NATO. And Lindsey Graham said NATO will never be the same, and Western European weakness and acquiescence is the cause. General Clark Kellogg, who was Trump's point guy in the Ukraine, said the NATO allies turned out to be cowards. What are your thoughts about those Republicans saying that about NATO?
I think Ted Cruz is absolutely right. It'll never be the same. I mean, it's going through a real big shakeup right now, and people are finding out what their true feelings are. And yeah, it was a nice club to be part of. But as Trump called out in his first term, you guys are part of this club, but you're not paying your dues. And so there was resentment from that, but they became stronger. And it showed the importance of that. And then when Putin went into Ukraine, it really highlighted why NATO exists. But now that we're in need of just the airspace, we don't need their armament. We're not asking for any personnel. They're just shunning us. And so, you know, I think Rubio's absolutely right. We have to rethink this, and there will be a new agreement amongst liberal democracies like they are and we are. And we all have to be on the same page as far as national protection, trade, things like that we work hand in hand with. But the way they're going, they're excluding themselves by their choice.
Well, Ted, you mentioned earlier about the petrodollar being American and potentially switching over to EU with Iran. But here's the insane part of that the EU needs to understand that they are literally, talk about hostages, they are literally putting themselves in a hostage situation with Iran. So they're basically putting their entire, if they do what you're talking about, and I know you're telling the truth on that they would literally be putting themselves to be held to ransom of the Ayatollahs. It is insane for them to even consider that.
It really is. And it's not just Iran with their with the petroleum and the energy for the EU. It's Russia. You know, they get a lot of their gas from Russia, LNG. And I thought it was lunacy when they wanted to get the Nord Stream 2 pipeline and have LNG coming from Russia, because they know who Russia is. Russia will turn that faucet off anytime they want to if they don't get their way, and they'll leverage them. You should have seen what they did to Ukraine. Russia cut their energy right before their winters, and they get those druids up there where they get 40, 50 below zero with the high winds. They cut their energy coming out of Russia to Mongolia, a country of 3.4 million people, by 50% going into the winter. And they'll do that for their own benefit, and they'll do it to leverage another country to get what they want. And China's doing the same thing. They do it with their rare earth minerals. They are doing it with their pharmaceuticals. And we put ourselves in a corner. And the good thing is there's the realization or the awareness that we have. And there's a lot of things working behind the scenes to get us independent from all these countries. And I think this is the way we need to go. I don't want to be an isolationist, because we need to have open trade. But it's one of those things where we're going to change life as we know it in the future, and it's going to happen real quick here.
It's really interesting that we might end up with our allies in Europe actually being the former Soviet bloc countries, from Ukraine to Poland to like Bulgaria to
Hungary,
Hungary, Lithuania, that kind of stuff. Seems like they're more on our side than our allies from World War II. But check this out, Ted. This is, I thought, was fascinating news. Germany now has issued basically a directive that military-aged men, I just find this hard to believe, but they have to have special permission now to leave the country. In other words, if you want to leave and go on a trip to the United States of America, you have to seek an extra level of permission if you're in a certain age group in Germany now. That is really fascinating to me.
Yeah, why do you suppose that is, John? It's, you see the buildup, you see these things. These are the preliminaries, the buildup before war. I mean, they're preparing for war there too. They put $1 trillion into their defense spending. There's a reason Japan changed their constitution to go from their military being used only for humanitarian and defensive purposes. Now they have first strike capabilities, and they're building up. They're spending 2%. Where they've been only about 0.75% to 1% on their military. Nations are preparing for this, and this let's hope and pray that ardent shot of the Earth stays blue, and that we can pass that on a healthy planet and a healthy society to the next generations. That's our goal. That should be the role of our government, and it should be leading this and working with allies. And in a way that they don't have to side 100% with us, but we should be on the same page of what we're trying to accomplish. Can you imagine if we were to put the $2 trillion Trump wants to put in the military, if we're doing that in research and development, building space programs, building cures for society or for illnesses, how much better humanity would be. And I know that's Pollyannish, but I don't think it's a bad goal to shoot for.
Absolutely not. Well, NATO, to the European League over there and the EU, they're definitely preparing for war. They just did an exercise in NATO. It's called Quadriga, I think is what it's called. It said the exercise took place in Lithuania and simulated evacuating wounded soldiers from the country and transporting them to hospitals across Germany. So they clearly are preparing for war. But if the EU is not going to be our ally, and I mentioned the old Soviet bloc countries, but who do you think would be our allies? Japan obviously is one. India, maybe the people with the different Arab nations and the Abraham Accords, because they have as much, if not more, at stake with a power or even a terrorist-led Iran than anybody else, because their populations are just simmering underneath what looks peaceful right now as well. So who do we turn to for allies?
This would be a great idea for a board game. Pick your ally, or who's going to be your ally game. Is it going to be Germany? Is it going to be, what country will it be? Will it be Cuba? We haven't even brought up what's going on with Venezuela, what's going on with Cuba now. When we have all this other stuff, did somebody drop the ball, or there's stuff going on behind the scene? And it'll be interesting how it plays out, John. Who's going to be the ally? Who's going to be the one that sides with America? Because you've got really two choices. You've got liberal democracies or authoritarianism, with the dominant one being China. Do you want to be controlled? Which one do you want to be part of? Do you want to be with China that does on-demand organ harvesting, re-education camps, putting people in there? Or do you want to have liberal democracy and free choice? You can't have free choice, as we all know, if you don't have a well-educated and disciplined citizenry.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Cuba and, of course, what's happening in Venezuela, and then you just were talking about Canada with China. I mean, the world is in a really fragile place right now, Ted. There's just no doubt about it.
Well, I heard a while ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we are going through a tectonic shift in world powers. And that has more relevance today because you see it happening. Things are being jockeyed around in the world, measuring up where do we put these armament. You think of what NATO has in those caves up in Norway and Finland and around the different countries, the missile silos, our military bases. What if they were to say we're closing any access to you here in Germany to get your stuff off our property, or in Norway where we have the NATO command and a lot of that stuff up in the Norwegian countries? What if they were to say we're blocking that? Do we go to war with them? And if so, how much does that degrade our armament? And I hate to be a doomsayer, but we are going through a time in history that you and I have never been through. This world has not been through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to switch gears with about 5 or 6 minutes we got left in the show and talk about a couple of other things. First of all, remember to call Freddie. Make that call. We need your support in order to keep this message out there. Join the team. Make that call. You see, call Freddie and become part of the program here. But other headlines. Since we did our last show, Pam Bondi now is been fired, whatever you want to call it. She's no longer the attorney general, and they've got a temporary guy, and there's been talk it might be Lee Zeldin and all that. And there's talk in general about potentially having a total cabinet shakeup. I really don't see that happening. But what are your thoughts about Pam Bondi specifically and what's happening with the cabinet, Ted?
I was kind of surprised that they did Pam Bondi. I know that there's been a distrust, I don't want to say distrust, a dissatisfaction with her over the Epstein files. Why she didn't release those like she was supposed to, I don't know. And I don't know if the next one will either. I think it would be a mistake to take Lee Zeldin from the EPA to put him as Attorney General. He knows nothing about that. I would get somebody like that, Mahit, I forget her name, Mahit Dijan or something like that, who is in the Justice Department, and she's up for consideration for that position. But to take Lee Zeldin, put him over there, then you have to train somebody in the EPA. Lee's done a good job there, deregulating a lot of this nonsense from the Obama and Biden administration. As far as Pam, I think she's on the way as Kristi Noem. Trump says she's got a lot of opportunities in the private sector. Obviously, there's been a fallout between them, and I think it stems from the Epstein files.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Noem. I have to mention that, man, what a crazy story that came out about her husband and living a dual life. And I mean, some of these
I didn't hear that. I missed that one.
Oh, you didn't hear about that?
No.
Oh, my God. So
be a cross-dresser?
Yeah. Well, he was on a website where it has transvestites on it, but also real women. He was dressing up like a woman. This is
no way.
Absolutely, her
Are
husband.
You serious?
I'm dead serious. I'm not making this up. And it shows him with fake boobs, all this stuff. He's admitted to it. He's basically
He admitted to it.
He admitted to it, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, it is bizarre, really bizarre. But that's maybe a story for another day. But back to Pam Bondi real quick. I mean, these people are just crazy, Ted. But
I
Pam
tell you,
Bondi,
I mean, Corey Lewandowski looked good.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Pam Bondi, and you mentioned the Epstein files. I think Donald Trump wants to be more aggressive with stuff. And I was talking to a friend of mine that made a really fascinating potential point over the weekend. He said that he thinks that the problem with Pam Bondi and releasing the Epstein files is that there's a lot of negative stuff in there, not necessarily about Trump, but about a wide variety of people. And then there's going to be pressure to prosecute these people for crimes. And that is what she didn't want to do. That's what he speculates, that they don't want to actually prosecute these people. And I think he's right. And to a certain extent, and I think Trump is ready to release everything, but he wants to see people actually do the perp walk if you're going to do that. That's what I think.
I agree, and the American people want that. By God, if you did the crime, you need to do the time. And that's really what needs to be done. If you want to clear the swamp up, release everything 100%. I'm okay with protecting the victims, but not the perpetrators, not the Johns that were involved in this kind of just sleazyism that has gone on. And that'll go on again. It's just one of those things, John, that history repeats itself, but we need to hold these people accountable. If you want to build trust in the American people with their government, release the dang files, release the UFO things, get your debt under control. It's crazy where we're at, and people play politics and then they brag about how much money they raise for their next election. And when they want us to reelect them and they let all this garbage go on, that was where my frustration was. It was like you couldn't shake anybody hard enough to say, what are you doing? Focus on the country. Don't worry about your election. If you do your job, you'll get reelected. But people don't do that up there. Very few of them. I shouldn't say. There are some who do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the show as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like what we're doing, share what we're doing, give it to your grandkids as a homework assignment to watch our show, because we're trying to battle for the heart and soul of America. We're trying to educate, motivate, and activate people, and we need your support to keep the message going. Ted, take us out.
John, I appreciate you saying that because it's so true. And I think of the words of Ronald Reagan. America is the last best hope for humanity and civilization. I really believe that. We are at a tipping point here, and we need your support. We want to educate people, because if we don't get this right, future generations will only look back on where we were and wonder, why didn't you save or work harder to save this? So we appreciate it. Send our message out, send our podcast out to all your email list, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday.
Absolutely. Peace out, everybody.
Happy Easter. Goodbye.